Now, the sexual abuse scandals in the Catholic Church keep soaring as a 4-year investigation of sexual abuse within the church in Germany reveals 60% of Catholic priests escaped punishment after sexual abuse misconducts by them were found. So how damning is that report? Well, my colleague Benny Sabubedu has been getting some answers from our partners, the DW. Correspondent Jefferson Chase gave her those answers.
Really disturbing news we're hearing. Now, do we know what necessitated this investigation?
Well, Bernice, this whole scandal actually started in Berlin in 2010. It emerged. The rector of a private Catholic school here found out about some allegations of sexual abuse of minors that had allegedly taken place back in the 1970s and 80s. They tried to keep it sort of in-house. They tried to deal with the problem themselves, but the press got wind of it. And from there, it just snowballed. The more they started digging around into the past, what had gone on in Catholic private schools, what priests and other clergy had done in the past, the more damning evidence they found. Until now, we have this report, and it basically implicates dozens of dioceses throughout the entire country of Germany.
So what exactly did the report uncover regarding the extent of sexual abuse in the Catholic Church in Germany?
Well, I mean, as I said, it's very damning. The report uncovers signs of systemic sexual abuse of minors. It documents 1,670 cases of sexual abuse over a period of 70 years. It says that 4.4% of all Catholic clergy in Germany were involved in these acts. I mean, that is a very, that points to a kind of a system of abuse that went on over a number of decades and that was then covered up. Some of the details are truly horrific. Some of this sexual abuse, it was mostly boys. Some of these acts were rape. And as you said, 60% of the clergy involved in these horrible crimes never got punished. So basically, this report is being considered, one person called it the 9/11 of the Catholic Church in Germany.
Interesting. Now, I understand that this has increased calls to allow Catholic priests get married. Is this something the church in Germany is considering?
Well, it's something that's being talked about. I mean, we need to, of course, remember the Catholic Church is a very, very conservative institution. But there's a growing momentum for the idea that priests should no longer be required to be celibate and that they should be allowed to get married. This is something that more and more ordinary people in the church think might be a good idea. They think it might be a way of reducing the amount of abuse because there's this feeling that celibacy leads to sort of perverse forms of sexuality. It's going to take a lot of persuading because, of course, the Catholic Church is a very traditional organization. However, we should remember that Catholic priests weren't always required to be celibate. This restriction has only existed since the year 1135, so there is actually precedent for doing things another way.
Jefferson, help us understand, you mentioned that this report was done over a certain number of years. Do we know if there are any Catholic priests or bishops who are currently serving and involved in these scandals as well?
Well, I mean, that's something that they're going to be trying to determine in the weeks and months to come. Basically, what this report does is it sort of lays out the extent of the problem, and it also makes a few recommendations, one of which is to rethink the policy maybe on celibacy, but they've also started to put a much greater emphasis on ways to prevent this sort of abuse to happen in the first place. There are programs in place to help priests deal with the pressures of their jobs, but they're not always put into practice everywhere equally. So that's really where the emphasis is now, is sort of fixing a system that went drastically wrong for decades, and not necessarily trying to root out every last individual, because, I mean, quite frankly, there are just too many of them.
And you just mentioned some recommendations that the authors of this report are advancing. Are there more you'd like to share?
Well, I mean, basically, what we need to remember is that this is a report that was commissioned by the Council of German Bishops. Now, of course, the Catholic Church in Germany has a responsibility for the way Catholicism is practiced in this country, but they ultimately. The buck really stops in Rome. The Catholic Church in Germany can't really do anything without the Catholic Church as a whole, and of course without Pope Francis. So the big event that we should all be looking toward will come next February, when the Pope meets from bishops from around the world. And this meeting is specifically to discuss this problem, because of course it's not just a case of the Catholic Church in Germany. There have been scandals in Australia, in Ireland, in the US. So it's really a global problem, and it's going to be very interesting to see how Pope Francis reacts to this when they all get together for this conference next February.
Thank you very much. Jefferson Chase is political correspondent with our partners DWTV, giving us some updates on that particular report on the German Catholic Church.
Bernice Awubedu speaking to Jefferson Chase, political correspondent with our partners DW, in our usual crossovers.